So, good
Okay.
evening, everyone, and welcome to the Zinester Talk episode 7. This is a part of the Sealit Circle Writers Festival, and tonight we're joined by Therese Villorante, Dan Christine Chan, and Jolene Alexandra to talk about their zines and chapbooks. May One was supposed to be here too, but sadly she's not feeling so well, so it'll just be the three of you. Anyway, I'll leave it now to the group to start their conversation.
Who wants to
Okay.
go first?
I
Shall
can
we
go
do it after
first.
the? Okay, you can.
Okay. So my name is Therese. I'm a multimedia storyteller. So I basically combine things that I love with my writing. So sometimes it's poetry and original songs. And for this zine, it's a promotion for my multimedia novel. So it's a combination of original songs and illustrations and prose. So yeah, that's me as a writer.
Mm, Jolene.
Hi, I'm Jolene. I'm from Singapore, and I work in content management. Used to work in publishing as well. Um, but lately, I've been really into escape rooms and puzzles and games. So, very being quite inspired by games who have been creating multi-layered gameplay and multi-layered lore. I decided to do the same thing as well with my writing. So, combining thrillers or thriller slash adventures with puzzles, if you can find the clues. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Diane Chan, and I write mainly poetry. So the collection I have for this festival is poetry, and I've been writing poetry since maybe 2016, but it's never been published publicly. So this is the first time I'm publishing them publicly. But when I was younger, I used to write short stories. But I think there's something about poetry that when you're not okay, it's able to speak to you in ways that ordinary narrative can't. So that's why I gravitated towards reading poetry and also writing poetry. Yeah. And maybe we can you tell us about the process of how you came up with your zines or zines, I should say.
By the way, this for those watching, this is the first time that we guys met. So yeah, we're getting to know each other and our work just now.
We've met each other on through our works, but that's
Yeah.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
So yeah, lots to ask each other. Yeah, we can proceed with the zines, like the process. Who wants to go first?
I volunteer you.
Me? Okay, so for me, it is really a novel. It's a multimedia novel, and I really wanted to promote it. So it took a long time to finish. Actually, I started writing that 2014. It was originally a blog musical. Have you heard of Tumblr?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's where I posted the stories. And then we started with the original songs first. And then we based off the story on the original songs. So um, we started 2014. We also finished the whole story 2014. But we decided during the pandemic that, it's a beautiful story and we really believe in that story. So why don't we make it or turn it into a book musical now? So no longer
Mm,
a blog musical, but a book musical. So I started rewriting it 2018, and I just finished writing it this year
mm,
because endless editing. And you know what? They don't tell you this, but you're editing still, even when you're like almost printing. So that's what happened with me, and that's how I also created the zine, so that more people will know about our multimedia novel. So that's basically the process. Oh, by the way, it's also a collaboration. So I'm not the only one. I wrote the story, but at the same time, yeah, Raf said, why do we say we? So I wrote the story. I also wrote the lyrics, but Jude Gitamundok, he is the composer, so he wrote the music for the original songs. My best friend, M. Zanoria, she was the one who created the illustrations, and Lee Anthony Pada, he created animated videos. So what happens in the book is that it's a story about heartbreak. You read about the story, but then the main character, her name is Sam. So she writes original songs to cope with the heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
She uses creativity to, feel a little bit better or to cope with everything that she's feeling. So you can scan in the book, and then you're led to the full lyric video on YouTube with the original song and the animated video. So yeah, it's a tedious tedious process as a storyteller because there are so many elements coming together. But at the same time, for me, as a reader, it's very immersive now because these things are also working together to heighten the story.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Actually, when I was reading it, it kind of reminded me of another creator who she did a comic musical.
Oh,
Yeah, she did.
Comic
Yeah, she
book.
did a comic music. Yeah, so her name is
very
she's
interesting name, yes.
Morgan. Yeah, she's Morgan May
Mm-mm.
from Malaysia. So she made a comic. So think about was this community in Malaysia who did some kind of a original character competition where people would create original characters in comic form, and they would start battling their characters with other characters. So
Whoa,
hers grew and it became a kind of like a warrior woman trying to fight her way through to get her soul or something like that. It's really very funny.
that's very creative
It's
as
the same
well.
thing. Yeah, and it's the same thing. She wrote her own songs, and then it's kind of like you scan and you go somewhere else. But it's also kind of like playlist with your reading experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
What's the comic called? Do you remember?
I need to look for the title. It was a really long. It was a really long title.
It's okay. I'll just search Morgan May on Google. I'm sure it'll come up.
Yeah, her Instagram is mediocre with two eyes in the
Ah,
first.
I love it.
Yeah,
Mediocre.
yeah, but two eyes in
Wordplay.
the first eye with the first eye.
I'm,
Yes.
I'm actually taking notes, so thank you for that, Jolene. But your story is also like very interactive, right?
You know what? I
Yeah. So
tried. I
I
tried
couldn't solve it. I'm
twice to
sorry. I
unlock.
couldn't solve.
I couldn't either. I tried to unlock it, and I was just staring at the. What does it? What does it? What does it mean? Like, because for anyone who's watching, there's like a crossword puzzle, and there are arrows, and then you have to
Yeah.
and it's just.
yes,
But it's so
Sam is
fun.
saying she unlocked one.
Yeah.
Yeah, my take is always if you're having fun with it, it's fine.
Yes, that's very
Yeah,
true. And reading should be
yeah,
fun. So it's amazing that your zines like that.
yeah. It was kind of like also, I think also because during the pandemic there was this rise of because you can't go out to do escape rooms anymore. You can't go out to have D&D and games anymore. So there was this rise of escape rooms in a box, escape rooms in an envelope, and what held all these together was actually the storytelling that came with it. And I was thinking, oh, maybe I would do something like this one day. You know, it's fun and whatnot. And then when things started to open up, and I was thinking about how I could put um, certain characters in this fictional universe in my head into onto paper. I was thinking, hey, why not? You know, all of them are thriller-based characters and thriller-based stories. Why not have the readers go on a parallel adventure? Um,
Mm,
because I was yeah, go on a parallel adventure, so it's kind of like you're solving the puzzle together with the character as well, or kind of like going on your own adventure within the same
Yeah.
world. Yeah, so it was a little bit like trying to align for example this particular zine. It was this girl getting cut off from an aunt who her parents did not, or at least her father did not approve of.
Yeah.
But this aunt is like, oh, I know you like this, so this is my last gift to you, and if you can open it, good for you. Yeah, so I think she kind of like, so that was when I was like, oh, okay, you can put the puzzles themselves behind the zines, like the whole structure of the zines when you do it hard copy. So one side is a
Mm,
story, one side is a puzzle, and I thought, okay, that's a pretty good idea. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
mm,
Did you also
yeah.
create the puzzles yourself? Like, it's really from your head, the puzzles.
Okay, okay. One thing about all these things is that you get to, when the more puzzles you play, the more you find out about how puzzle making works, and the more
Mm.
ciphers there are. So major clue, one cipher that I did use one cipher that I did use is named after an emperor, an
An
emperor
emperor.
of Indian
Okay,
history. Yes,
noted.
yeah. So, and I realized that it's such a common cipher that, yeah, it's such a common cipher that in so many puzzle books that we're getting, but it's all from the West. So it's kind of like your context is a little bit different. Yeah, your
Mm.
context is a little bit different. So it's really fun to just put it together to go like, oh, okay, maybe this is how you hint, how you draw hints to it without your readers having to scan and go into the hints. But I think it's also a good opportunity to kind of like say, when you are doing puzzles like this, or when you're doing experiences like this, it's not so much about the accomplishment, but it's also about the curiosity. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, fulfilling the
Yeah.
curiosity, and then it's like, there's no shame in getting hints. It's there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. No. I really like what you said about it's not really about solving the puzzle immediately, but it's more like leading the reader through that experience of solving the puzzle, like not really jumping to
Mm,
solving it. And I think it's really important, especially when you're even when you're writing like a poem, like you want the reader to just not always be like, but what does it mean, like you just have right, people are like, it's a poem, but what does it mean? But
Yeah,
I'm like, but you have to read it. That's why it's a poem. That's why I wrote it. I can't just
mm,
tell you what it means. Otherwise,
it's
I won't
true.
need to make it into a poem. But inside the like the stanzas or the yeah, the inside the stanzas, you would have certain hints or so-called keywords that would kind of help them. I like to think of it as a thread that they can pull so that the whole poem kind of unravels. But the reader has to find that certain clue or the hint or whatever you call it, like the thread pull. So yeah, I really like that what you said about it's not just about
Mm.
solving the puzzles.
Mm. It's
yeah, and I
it's
think
like, yeah, yeah. Go ahead,
that's right.
Jolene.
I think like for Diane, you have such it's you have poems that like span through a lot of pages, and I think it, throughout the whole thing, I think what's more important to me about it was how you are just going through the experience of just taking in the context and taking in the words, and how they relate to each other. I think context is also like, I think I feel like, the reader's experience is also another study in context, I would think. Yeah.
Mm.
I
How
love
did it
how
how did it feel when you were reading through it? Because I was conscious that it was a bit too long, and it's not. I was thinking, oh, maybe I should put more punctuation marks, or I should put more periods or commas. But then, I think I was trying to mimic that experience of when you're like when your thoughts are racing and it doesn't really have a structure to it. You just kind of go on and on and on and on, and whatever you say doesn't really have a structure or proper punctuations. So I just wanted to know what your experience was like. Did you find that, oh, maybe I should have put more, I would have like more punctuation marks, or did you feel lost, or did you yeah, what was your experience reading it?
I didn't mind the punctuation marks at all. I didn't even notice it, like the technicalities or the syntax. I just really loved how you took me on a journey, and I think that's why you entitled it Venture. It just felt so introspective. Like it's really something that you write about when you're in this quiet place and you're just being honest with yourself. I think what I found most striking in your writing is how um, it just really had this prominent feeling of acceptance, like acceptance that you're gonna lose friends, acceptance that you're gonna be lonely, acceptance for like the hard human truths. But at the same time, still in that poem, you still also feel that longing, the longing for friendships, for closeness. So I love your
Yeah.
writing. It's just so human.
Like, turns into mush. Um, yeah, I think actually before this talk that we have now, I just finished so I had a training. I think we lost the
Yeah, I
Reese.
think she lost the wreath. Oh no.
Okay, we will wait for her.
Did she? Oh my goodness. Okay. Ah. Okay, I
Please
think
come
Steph is
back,
trying to
please. Please come back.
to join. Oh no. Ah, Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi problems.
Yeah,
Southeast Asia
but yeah,
problems.
true.
So-
Wrong.
Southeast Asia problems. You just roll with it. That's how we do it here.
Yeah,
So maybe you can wait for her. Oh, you guys can continue for now. Okay, so
continue
maybe
for now.
three. Jolene, can you like? She said
Yeah,
what
yeah,
she
yeah.
had to say.
Yeah, so the thing was, okay, I'm actually a story reader, not so much a language reader. But I think when I go into language reading mode, it's actually mostly with poetry that uh that becomes very compelling because I'm not reading about something that is highly um like the imagery is not too far out. I could relate to it, and I think that's what caught my attention um for your poems because it's something very simple, but you're pretty much putting words to emotion. And going through it, it's kind of like I'm not really caring so much about what's happening, but I'm caring more about how I'm feeling going through the
Mm,
experience itself. So that was how it it was for me, and I think especially when it comes to things like placing words, I think that's a fun part about poetry, right? You
yeah.
place words in a certain way. You do the indents and the spaces,
Mm,
and after a while you start to question, oh, why is it there?
Yeah.
And then when you read through it again, you're like, oh, so this is why.
yeah. And that's a
Yeah.
fun part, right? You go back and like, yeah, why is it like why is it spaced this way, or why does she repeat the lines, or why does it
Mhm.
even in the structure of the imagery, I tried to make it there were some poems that were like, for example, the Kintsukuroi. So it
Mhm.
was like the golden was the love is patient, love is kind, and
Mm,
just goes through the body of the poem. So
mm,
there's this tension of like the the main stanzas are really sad, but you also have the I would say golden part, which kind of redeems the experience. But then at the same time, you're reading it, and I don't know what it was like for you, but then the what I had in mind for that was it's supposed to be an angry response to how sometimes bad things happen, and we're just so quick to say that,
React.
oh, it's more beautiful because it broke, and then now you can put like gold over it, but then without really um letting yourself grieve the bad thing that did happen. Yeah.
I love how there's also just so much hopefulness in your poems. Like you really delve into the big feelings and the dark stuff, but there's really also that hopefulness. So I really feel that. Well, for me, when it comes to poetry, it's like putting language with things that you actually have no words for. And I also really feel that in your poems, like even just the drinking of the coffee. There was a poem there with you just drinking the coffee. It's, I forgot how you phrased it. I actually highlighted so many things in your zine, but yeah, it's just that moment. Like it's a very small moment, but even in that small moment, you just also feel the immensity of like human truth.
Mhm.
Yeah. 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 Um yeah, well that was my hope. I think a- as a poet, if I can call myself that. But when you write
You wrote
poems,
it's a poet.
you
You
kind of
are a
want
poet. You're a poet.
you,
You wrote your
you,
poet.
Don't do that.
There's no
there's
gatekeeping here.
so much pressure. Um so much pressure. But yeah, when you're a poet, you kind of want to be sincere. I read somewhere that you have to be sincere and earnest, but also you need the depth of the emotion that comes with it. So, for example, I'm really glad that you pointed out the coffee imagery because it means that there was at least one thing that you resonated with. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, like an entire poem. Sometimes you just like one line or one phrase, and then as you go through your life, it always comes back to you like, oh, that imagery is so beautiful, or it gives me hope even if
Yeah,
you're sad, or but you remember, oh, there's coffee, and drinking coffee is one of
yeah.
those things
They
that
actually
make
have so
life.
many amazing images there. Yeah.
Mhm.
You even put that in your note to your reader. I love how you said that. Like, just at least even have just an image that you can carry with you for the rest of your life or that you can remember. Because that's so true when it comes to poetry. It's just really that image that changes the way you feel about things or just reminds you to feel things more deeply.
Mm,
it's
yeah.
it's that exercise of, I think, deliberation and deliberate. There's there's always intention, whether or not, I mean, whether or not you intended for certain things to be felt a certain way, or like when people read it and, oh, I feel this too. And I think at the end of the day, it's also kind of like getting the words to help you feel something. Or like, think about something in a certain way, that kind of, without having to do it in a rather step by step instructional, oh, you should be feeling this, kind of way. Yeah, it's just go with it. It's a very just go with it kind of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's that's why I also put the imagery of ocean, like the
Mhm.
ocean waves. It's really this image of like coming and going. Like you let things come and you let things go. They come at you, and you don't really have any control over that. So like what Therese said, you lose friends, you lose loved ones, people move away, you lose a job, whatever. But you don't really have a full control over that. So you kind of just let it come, and then when it wants to go, you also let it go. Yeah. And I wanted to ask Jolene, did you base the character on anyone you knew? Because like in when you were writing the character, there was that concept of like, oh, my dad doesn't approve, or like there's this tension in the story that kind of adds depth to the playfulness of the puzzle, unlocking the puzzle, and it's just the right amount of grit, I would say. Like it's not too fantasy like that
Okay.
she had no problems or she wasn't she's just this like random girl who likes playing puzzles. I felt like it had some humanity to
Thank you.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a culmination. I use okay, so the thing is that this when I was writing when I was starting out as a writer, I used to be like, oh, okay, this character is based on this person, this character is based on this person. But I feel now it's very much a culmination of what I see and how I would form a like for example this character is kind of like a culmination of people I know and some character and injected with certain characteristics that I do see like in fiction or in for people I do like bump into but I think what made it more fun and easier for me to do was to actually create for me this character making her relatable
Mm,
and like more believable was a lot easier for me to navigate the story with because I did not have to think so far ahead or like no, not so much so far ahead. I did not have to think too differently from the context that I'm in. I mean, it's like at this point in time, I'm also kind of like thinking, you know, uh, growing, growing up or like writing as a writer in Singapore or in Southeast Asia, you do have this issue of cultural cringe
yeah.
where it's like, oh, it's Asian, okay, it's not as good, that kind
Yeah.
of that kind of
Yeah.
that kind of thing that we grew up with,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure it
Asian.
happens. Yeah, and I think it
Colonization.
yeah, and I think it was only until like when I hit like my late 20s, early 30s where I was like, you know what? Just embrace it. I mean, there's no harm doing it. And I think one one of the reasons was because if you look at others doing it and not in a way that's like, oh, okay, to make a story Asian it has to have this and this kind of and you it feels more natural towards it. And when I started to um implement that into my writing and to my stories, I felt that it was actually a lot easier. Like,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
true. Um,
And
with my
yeah,
with
with
my
the
story
Reese
as
also.
well. Yeah.
yeah.
I just wanted to relate with what you said. Because the main character, is actually in Cebu. And you rarely read books that the setting is in Cebu, but
Cebu.
yeah, but it's the character's truth. And it was so fun to write actually because I knew those places. I grew up in those streets. So there was really more heart in the story. And yeah, it was more fulfilling for me to write because those streets are the streets of my childhood as well. And I think that you can also see that in the character just because of the setting. So the setting really also changes the writing and the character.
And even the way that she speaks, you didn't try to make her sound more like American, quote unquote American. Like I felt that it was a very um okay, let's not put a blanket table, but it was a very like Filipino way of speaking or thinking in
Yeah,
English. Like
yeah,
you didn't make it sound proper like Americanized
yeah.
slang English. Um and I yeah, that was something I really appreciated because um yeah, we need more characters that are more local.
Yeah,
Um yeah, and it always feels nice when you're reading something and then it's a place you know, or the way around. It's there's something magical about seeing your place or your hometown or your nationality um written into a character. Like it's
yeah,
somehow because like in London you have James Bond or you, like Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice and the English countryside, but no one writes about Cebu and right
yeah.
so or Singapore and nobody names
Yeah,
them like Chinese or Asian,
Yeah, yeah.
like Asian names because
Because
it's not cool.
I think it has to do with our influences as well. Like growing up, we're reading, Western novels. So like
Mhm.
you're super fans of all of these like English Western characters. But then you realize when I think when you find your voice, and you know yourself more as a storyteller, that when you're truthful, and when you really know the story, it's just, yeah, it's magical. It's beautiful when you're writing something honest and truthful. Like even putting in the local color, like lechon and
Yeah.
food and streets. Yeah, it's the street food. It's just so fun.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see how places where you thought of, like you grew up and you didn't really think much of certain places, turn
Mm.
out to be very interesting to when other or to others when they like look in and whatnot. Like in Singapore, everybody is all about Marina Bay Sands. Thanks,
True,
rich
that's
Asians. Everybody's about Marina Bay Sands, and everyone's like, yeah, yeah, I'm in the suburbs. What the, what's so interesting about it? But when you find that imagination and adventure in the places around, I think there's always something to work with there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're opening the door wide. You're making the world bigger so that
Mhm.
people know more about Cebu, about Singapore, right?
Yeah, and it also helps with that attentiveness we were talking about earlier. Like every day you're mixing with people who are, you're in places and you're meeting people and you're having all these experiences, but somehow we have this concept of it's too ordinary to write about. Like, oh, it's not New York, it's not wherever. But then when you write it down, it actually gives a sense of weight and a dignity to what you go through, like the everyday experiences. And um, I think there's this tendency also to like, kind of you want to market yourself to a
Mhm.
certain group of people, and then you wonder like, oh, if I write it like this, like who's going to read it if it's like no one can relate to it, or it's Asian, or it's Asian experiences, and it won't resonate with other people. But I think I like what Therese said about just writing from honestly, but that's really
Mhm.
hard as well, like writing from your own experiences and your own um
Mhm.
worldview, I guess. And then it's what makes your writing real and not cliche, because everyone is unique and everyone is different and no one is like somebody else. And I think it was C.S. Lewis who wrote about, if you want parang if you want to be original, you don't really you will fail if you try to keep thinking of, maybe somebody did this before, somebody wrote this before, then you will be frozen like in fear of, it's been written before or whatnot. But then if you just try to write something from your heart or from your own experiences, then you find that, like for example, your Jolene's zine and your zine as well, nobody else who submitted to the market has that same concept. And it's just, there's so many zines on for sale on the market, but nobody, you think like, oh, somebody else will do this or but actually no one did do that. And it's the same for mine. Like when I was putting it together, I thought, oh, it's only 13 poems, like who would buy like who would buy 13 poems about grief? Like it's not fun. Nobody nobody wants to talk about death, or you know losing friends, or losing people. And Raphael said that's a lot of
Yeah,
poems though.
yeah, that
Yeah.
is a lot of for zine. That's a lot of poems, actually.
Yeah.
But
I
I'd
agree.
buy it. I think it's a very profound. Your themes are very profound. Because each and every one of us, we grieve at some point. So when we read your poems, or like people who write about grief and loneliness, sometimes, it's what gets you through the day. So it's important to write about the hard things, the difficult
Mhm.
things. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, since we're on the topic of difficult things, so you were writing about like heartbreak, right? Like the
Yes.
guy, the
First
guy
heartbreak.
ghosted, the guy ghosted the girl,
Yeah.
and um, how much of it was based on real life?
It's
It's too
it's
too
it's it's
personal.
very it's fine. It's very loosely based, so I'm fine
Yeah,
answering it
yeah.
because it's very loosely based.
I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
there. Yeah.
It's
I
fine.
think we're all writers here, and we have to get material from somewhere.
Yeah. We get material everywhere.
Yeah.
Mental material. Yeah.
The mental notes. Like the writing doesn't just happen during the act of writing. Like it happens all the time. Yeah.
Very
So
very Taylor Swift.
yeah. And then you write songs about it. You write songs
Yeah.
about the guy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think when I wrote it, I was experiencing heartbreak. But then when I rewrote it, I think it was just very important for me to rewrite it, because when I was rewriting it and editing it, I was writing like a big sister. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this girl. This
Yeah.
girl,
Why?
I'll help you out.
Yeah.
I'll help you to feel better. I'll do my best to make you feel better. So it's providing safe spaces for those heartbroken and with anxiety. So yeah, it revolved around that. Yeah.
And also for Jolene, how much of the, like, when you're writing things, how you find that, like, to what extent does writing and rewriting it help you process certain things in your life?
It's
Is
actually
it
funny when it's actually funny when Therese was saying, like, after a while when you rewrote it, you started looking at the character and uh, more as a elder sister or a mentor kind of thing, because that's what happened to me as well. When you grew up reading YA and you really identify with like the main
Yeah.
characters, and you're like, oh, I'm like Hermione Granger, or I'm Katniss Everdeen, or whatever nonsense that is. And then now that you're older, you're like, you know what, Haymitch has a point. You
That's
know
so
what, the
true.
older ones who are seen as stuck in their ways, they
Yeah.
do have a point. And I think some of it comes from that, but some of it comes from that. Some of it also comes from answering questions. Like, I think one of what there was this previous story that I wrote out of. I think it was out of exasperation or out of spite, because one of my friends who works in academic publishing, or educational publishing, was like saying, "Oh yeah, we are laying off people because nobody's buying textbooks and journals or whatever anymore." And this is Singapore. We are like, assessment books everywhere. And so the first thought that came to my head was, "Oh, even if this doesn't bring in income, what else is there left behind?" And then it just came from. And I think this is something that was quite similar as well. It's like it just started from a question of I think a question in response to what I see around. This one was particularly because uh, there were um, there were uh, points or question or like things that I heard being brought up about how in prison systems around the world, some of them are lifers, in a sense where, you know what, I just want to be here because if I go out, I need to work and I need to struggle. If I'm in the system itself, government's going to take care of me. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it sparked off from there, and then came up with the, oh, this aunt is not good for you. Like, don't ask why. Like, status
Yeah,
seeking domineering persons is, don't ask why this aunt is not good for you, like that kind of
yeah.
thing.
Just
Yeah.
accept it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
expectation that when you're a child, you just have to blindly obey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh,
How
that's a
about you,
theme.
Diane?
That's a theme. Um gosh, how yeah. Wait, Therese first because I'm still processing.
It's okay. You just feel. Wait, what's the question? I think I
Statist? No, did someone say statist? Did Jolene say statist?
You?
Ah,
No?
ignoring you, ignoring you.
Okay.
Yeah.
wait, I thought I answered the question. Was there another question?
No, I wanted to ask about
Mm.
what Jolene said about how when you're a child, you're kind of expected to not question things.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's not just in our own household, but it's basically society expecting us to just to, obey. Or like when you're a child, like we know better than you. So yeah, yeah. I think it's important
At
that,
the same time,
yeah.
yeah, but at the same time, I think it's also kind of like the whole protecting children from
Yeah.
uh, how we see how like the adults and older people see the world as well,
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
and you don't really realize that they actually absorb and see more than we think.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or we're not aware as adults, like our fears, how it actually harms them.
Mhm.
Like, fears
Yeah.
that are just like so many fears, like making the world to be this really fearful thing. So it can be
Mhm.
harmful for a child. Mm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Speaking of, yeah, I think it's also because when you live in the city and there's a lot of scammers and like bad things, and
Mm.
I think that's also something I had to struggle with growing up because uh, um when you grow up and you always hear about negative things, your mind your mind tends to just self protect, and I don't really think that's compatible with creativity. Like you're always just so afraid of, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens?
That's
What if
true.
they don't like me? What if
Mhm.
I fail? Or and you end up like you still want to be creative, but you want to be creative in a safe way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like if I do this, and then maybe I'll be more successful compared to if I just chart my own path, which is what
Mhm.
venture is. Like you don't really know what's out there, but you're you're willing to try, and it's dangerous, but it's also equally dangerous to just stay wherever you are.
Mhm.
'Cause
Yeah.
you'll drown, or you'll have no food. There are sharks where you are.
I
You have to find a way to move, even if you're
Mhm.
scared.
Mm, yeah. I really love Elizabeth Gilbert's perspective on fear, because it's very true that we shouldn't villainize fear because fear is there to protect us, right? Like it tells us not to get in the car with that stranger that you have a bad feeling about. So fear is very important. But when
Mm,
it comes to creativity, she actually says that there's no room for fear in creativity because you're not gonna die. Like
yeah.
if you like take
It's
risks
not
with,
life or
yeah.
death.
Yeah, yeah. So it's important that you just, it's part of the process. Fear and
Mhm.
doubt, it will always be part of the process. But the important thing is that you just keep creating, no matter the fear and doubts.
Like, speaking of fear and doubt, do you want to share like one specific fear you had when you were creating the zines? Like if you're just open to sharing it without being too detailed.
Who wants to go first?
Jolene.
Common, common
Diane
puzzle
always
fear.
volunteers.
Common puzzle fear.
I'm
uh,
just. Did you notice that I'm just asking all the questions so I don't have to answer anything?
Diane always
and then we're
volunteers.
gonna go. We're going to go to you after this. So
Next, Diane answers first.
Oh,
yeah,
Jolene, you know,
yeah.
yeah.
I think it
Mm,
wasn't so much about people not being able to solve it, but I think a common fear was that it was going to be viewed as a I think one of the fears was kind of like this. It was just going to be viewed as a story, and then people are going to ignore it because I think
mm,
at the core of it, it's not just about just reading a story and enjoying it. It's also kind of like the um, am I doing enough to pique curiosity or poke a little bit of curiosity into how things work. And if you're talking about the physical version, the hard copy of the zine, its structure itself is already quite curious because it's this big piece of A3 and then you fold it into a book like thing, and then there's things on the other side. Sometimes people are a little bit curious and they look on the other side, and sometimes they find nothing, sometimes they find something else. It's a nice surprise. But yeah, I think that was one of my biggest fears, that we have grown so accustomed to we have grown so accustomed to having the answers like that we stop being curious,
Mm.
and we stop trying to dig a little more, I guess. Yeah.
yeah. Also, it's not um ordinary, or it's not normally what you see. Like how big is an A3? It's a bit smaller than an A4. Is it
uh
bigger?
no, it's two A4s.
Two A4,
Two,
so it's
yeah, it's two
bigger.
A. Yeah, it's bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. Sometimes when you see that, it's like, really. Well, if I were doing that thing, it's like, oh, will the publishers publish it? It uses too much
Yeah.
paper. Like practical things, like you would need something harder for it to stand, have a structure instead of
Yeah,
just
so it's
using
like
flim.
A3 and folded, I think, into A6, because you actually fold it into eight sections, and then it becomes like a book. Yeah, it becomes like a pocket size. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also kind of like the other thing is when people look through, especially for writers, especially for writers who do not do photography, who do not illustrate. The other fear is that you have so much to say. Somebody goes up to your and goes, "Oh my goodness, a lot of words,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, "Then what's the point of
um,
you coming to this?"
what do I do?
I'm a writer. I write.
Oh, a lot of words. I'm like, huh? Okay.
It's so weird that you still hear people actually say that.
And it's
Yeah,
also
especially when it's
funny because when you're a graphic designer, you're supposed to design the text, not the other way around. Like if you have
Yeah.
500 pages, you're supposed to design that. You're not supposed to say, "Okay, you make it 100, so I have less work to do." Like you have to work. You have to design around the text rather than asking the writer to fit the text to your design.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think this happens more when it's like art markets where it's cross mediums. So you have different artists and whatnot, and then like it's like five illustrators, and like five crafters, and then writers, and then the products are different. So sometimes it happens a little bit more when people are like, oh, okay, oh my goodness, a lot of words. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to know about theories because I saw your songs.
Hmm.
They fit the page, and was that intentional, or did you have to negotiate that with your layout person? Like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe like, how do you structure that?
Yeah, I think we did a lot of experimenting. We asked her many times to edit it, and we're really grateful that we have this person, who was very patient with us. And I think that's That's where when you're making something new, there are a lot of challenges and like new fears that you didn't know were there. Like for example, I was afraid that, oh my gosh, what if the QR code doesn't work? And we printed like 200 copies.
There's an error. There's a one
Yeah,
dot
oh
that
my
doesn't
gosh,
work.
yeah. So like, what if it doesn't work? So yeah, that was a great fear of mine with this zine and with the multimedia novel.
Oh, mine was password.
Oh
What if the answer is actually one letter off?
Yeah, because you're designing it right, and then nobody. Actually, that happened to me a few like 2 weeks ago. So I was designing this activity, and then in the activity you're supposed to look for like a free date where both of you have a free date, and you're supposed to go out together, and you're supposed to have a free date put in your calendar. And then they kept doing it for maybe 20 minutes because they kept going like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then they kept doing it and doing it, and they were already getting frustrated that there was no common free date. And then I think like after the activity, somebody came up to me and said like, actually, you made a mistake. There's no free date. That's why they were taking forever to. Like, why? Yeah. So and that's easier because it was just a class. But if it was something that you had to print out, that's more
yeah,
problematic.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask Jolene something. Um, so you're creating I'm thinking of how to phrase it. You're creating something new. So like there's no template, right? Like when I was creating the multimedia novel, like who do I look to for inspiration? Like I couldn't find anybody. So like
Yes. Yeah.
there are a lot of, fears and like insecurities and like you don't know where to find answers. So like how did you navigate that?
Um, I think it came okay. A lot of experimenting. I think I only came to the idea after. I came to the idea after because before this it was very game is game, novel is novel, and or short story, and
Mm.
I think it was after a while when I started like thinking, you know what, I think let's just go with something that you find fun,
Yeah.
and try out something. At first I was thinking postcards. There are postcard games, there are postcard stories. It's very interesting. And then I was also thinking, oh, okay, because my husband's very experimental with his the way he tries to put comics into different forms, and he introduced me to this like what I said, the A3 piece of paper, and you fold it into a book that's like an A6 size.
Mm.
And that was when I was thinking, oh, okay, what's a good way to start putting story bites out there without having to wait for like a publisher or an agent or self-publish with like so much. And I thought, okay, zines, short stories, fine. And I want to add a puzzle in it. Do I make things weird in the story, or do I just like try something else? And I thought, okay, there's the other side of the zine that nobody really looks at. um, so this so that one side is the story and the other side is the well, okay, like why not just try it? And I think I tried a few different ways of how to go through about it. I did have help though. I did get one of my friends to play tests and
Mm.
and like see how it works, and I think it worked. So
Yes.
it's like, oh, okay, yay! It was quite fun because it was just a different way of telling a story without having to stick to
Yeah.
certain mediums. And I think having this mindset of you know what, just do it anyway and see what happens, because
Mm.
the
Yeah.
for me, like this zine is relatively low cost. It's just black and white print. You just photocopy and you fold.
Mm.
It's still not so. It's not such a huge commitment or investment. It's like, let's just get like 50, 10, 10, 20 copies, 50 copies, and we'll see what happens. If anything else, it's just a nice calling card.
Yeah.
We have all of this. Yeah.
Basically, fun over fear.
Or like, do it scared anyway.
Yeah, true, true.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and also for theories, you don't have someone to, yeah, like you said, like inspiration, because nobody else
Mhm.
has done it before.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody with like original songs in their novel. But I've always been intrigued with when you have different elements together. Yeah, it's very interesting for me. I remember reading 13 Reasons Why. And like
Mm.
Hannah Baker like had that recording, and I looked for it on YouTube. Does she actually have her voice recording there? So yeah. I think when you're drawn to something, and like Jolene, like you feel like curiosity is a big thing with your creativity. And yeah, I think that's very true. It's important like to be curious, like you go where you're drawn to, where you feel like you're interested in, because it can surprise you that path.
Okay,
So
Stephanie,
Diane, what about
question. What about me? Um,
what about you and your what
what
fear
Yeah.
did
was
you
the yeah, the fear. Um, well, the fear was, um, so actually the poems that I wrote, it was, I had a few from like 2016 and 2019, but a lot of those poems were written over the course of 1 week, because I was going through some things and I needed to write it out for me to process those things. And I just thought, oh, why not just make more and then submit it to submit it to the scene market. Um yeah, so I did that, but the fear was like, what if it's all same, because I'm writing it in one frame of mind. So what if they all sound the same, or Diana should just be one poem. Why did you make it three? Or yeah, there was that fear of, yeah, there is a theme, but maybe like it's redundant. Like maybe you don't need 13, you just need 10, 9, maybe 5, because 13 is a lot. So that was one fear I had among many. Actually, when I submitted my zine, after I hit submit, I was I was shaking, as in I was so
Aw.
nervous. I was so nervous. It was my first time putting anything out there in public. I usually just write for myself process, and that actually ties in with Steph's question for us, like how much do you write for yourself versus write for an audience in mind? Because for example, something meant to be experienced like a puzzle or a multimedia novel or even poetry, these seem to be written for someone else other than yourself. I can see how she said, I can see how writing with an audience in mind can add a lot of pressure and expectation and fear and disappointment. So, yeah, maybe who wants to go first?
You,
How much do you write
Diane.
for yourself?
You
Me?
go for it.
you kind of answered your the question.
Yeah, I actually kind of answered it. So I usually write for myself, or I write for just one person.
Mm,
Um, so I have a close friend who always likes this quote, this Kurt Vonnegut quote about how when you're writing, you're supposed to just write to one person, because if you write to an audience, what was his term, like your story is going to get pneumonia and you're going to catch a cold. It's like opening a window and then to that world where you're talking to an audience. Really, when people read your work, they don't read it as we, they read it as
mm,
I usually write for one person only. That's why even in my reader's note it was like, I hope you find something that you can carry for life.
mm,
It's not this like marketing term where it's like young adults or housewives or men aged 15 to 13. Like nobody really wants to be a person who's part of 15 to 30 male and Asian or some like yeah. So that's how I write. And the other thing to remember is when you're writing, even if I'm writing for myself, whenever I share it to a friend, like for example, this zine, I shared it to a friend and she was telling me certain things that I didn't really intend for it to be there, but she read it in the poem, or at least that's how she interpreted it. And my personal philosophy is that when you're in the process of writing something, it's still very much your own experiences and your own techniques or your own technicalities. But then once you publish it and then you give it to the world, it's not really yours anymore. Um, People take it and they find something they can relate to with that piece of work, and you can't really say, "Oh, actually, that's not what it means."
True.
Like you just feel grateful that somebody actually connected with what you wrote instead of saying, actually, this was supposed to mean this and not that.
Mm,
Yeah, so that's my answer.
mm. That's beautiful, Diane.
Now it's your turn.
I really like what you said with just thinking of one person. Yeah, and that's very true for me. For me, with my process, I start with writing for myself first. And then after I feel like I finished writing for myself, that's when I think about the readers. So I write it for myself and then I edit it. And then during the editing, that's when, okay, I'm a reader now. Is this sentence, is this understandable or not? So
Mm.
things like that, yeah.
And
Yeah, I
also
think
when
mine
you
is also kind of
yeah,
about the
go.
mine is about the same as well.
Mm.
I like to remind myself that writing is a craft, but publishing is a business. So so
Yes.
when it comes to that, it's a little bit easier to like accept that because when you write first and you have to get things out on a blank page, you kind of like want to have fun doing it. You want to know that you're doing this because you need to, right? You need to for yourself.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to editing, you start to take note of certain, I think not overly, but like you take note of certain nuances of like if I'm not able to get this, will somebody else be able to get this? Because we know our stories the best, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I think I draw the line at trend chasing.
Yes.
Like I'm
Yes.
not going to write something just because somebody's like I'm not going to write something just because somebody's like, you should do this, everyone's doing this, then it's a little bit
Yeah.
pointless for me.
Yeah.
It's
I've
very
tried the
obvious
trend
in your
chasing before,
work.
it doesn't work.
It's so obvious in
Yeah,
your work
I've
too.
tried the trend chasing before, it doesn't work. Yeah.
I feel the cringe. Trend chase. Trend chasing. Um yeah, there was also this article I wrote, not I wrote, I read a few months back about how you're supposed to trust your readers. But the process I went through was like, oh, is this, is my poetry too vague? Is it too hard for people to understand? Like maybe I mean, that's the complaint with poetry. Like, what is she saying? Why can't she just say it straight? Why does she have to say it like that? But I think this article also said something about how when your readers feel like you trust them to get what you're trying to tell them or write to them, it gives them a sense of um, dignity or encouragement or motivation
Mm,
to read because you trust them enough to. It's like giving them a compliment. Like, you are smart enough to figure this out. I don't have to put everything out there for
mm,
you to understand it. And I think it's also true for me when I'm reading certain books. Like I like when people just there's this singer songwriter called Sarah Groves that I really like her songwriting, and the way she writes is um you can liken it to, for example, you're in the forest and then you see a wild animal and
Mm-hmm.
have the option of taking a picture of it. But me as the expert and you as the someone who's just coming along for the tour, I could capture it and give it to you, or I can tell you where to look, what to look for, and then to be really attentive to that one split second that the animal will come out. But the trade-off is that you won't get a picture because you're busy being in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a writer, I want to be the kind of person who invites the readers to see for themselves, not just say, "This is what I saw, therefore this is what you also must see." People are different; they have different experiences and different backgrounds, and um, what what they're able by giving them that experience of inviting them in to see that wild animal, they also bring in their own experiences that color that experience. So it's not like you don't have to feel so pressured that you have to present it the right way, because I think there's also that aspect of humility of like I'm just sharing what I experience or what I know, but it doesn't mean that this is how you should see it or this is how things are. So, for example, if it's a sunset, I may see it this way, but and it's obvious when you're with someone, like when you're with a friend and you're watching a sunset, and then you look over to them, and it's actually in one of my poems. Like when you look at them, you kind of have this feeling of I think they're seeing something different from me, but at the same time you're bonded by that experience of seeing the sunset together. But then since you're you have that shared experience, but me being Diana and you being Therese and you being Jolene, we can't ever really have the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
So even when it comes to loss or joy, we all share the same sorrows, same joys, but you can't say that they're all the same because like even within your own experiences, like every joy and every sorrow that you can't really be replicated. Like you lose a friend here and then you lose a friend 5 years later. You lose a friend also at the same time, but is it really the same experience? No, 'cause you can't weigh those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of related to my poems as well.
Mhm.
It's I was trying to capture that feeling of how important every individual is, how sacred all your moments are if you would just pay attention to them. And I think most of the time we just ignore or say, it's like, oh, it's just a sunset. Like there's sunsets every morning, but then not really. Like one day it's orange, the next is purple, the next
Yeah.
it's and it also changes with every minute. Like sometimes it's really orange and it goes pink, then purple, and then you can't really say which one is your favorite or which one is more beautiful. It's just you have to go through that process of letting yourself feel like, oh, I like the pink but it's gone, and but there's an orange within. So it's that experience of coming and going and letting the emotions flow, not trying to like no, like trying to keep the sunset and therefore you don't enjoy the process of it
Yeah.
changing.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's part of our work as writers as well. Just being here and now, like making the most of the moment. Just this awareness also that we're temporary. Moments are fleeting, but like with words, with what we do, we're able to make the most out of this moment, like to suck all the juice out of that moment as
Mm,
best as we can. Yeah, like the
yeah,
sunset, right?
yeah. Jolie.
Yeah, it's also kind of like the yeah, just to note that I think after a while you start to learn that it is a case of you sharing the story that you really want to share, and you're not controlling your readers at all. It's kind of like, this is
Yeah.
what I want to share. How you want to, like, how you want to consume it is up to you, and
Mm.
there you go. And if you get and you get what I'm trying to say, if you get what I'm trying to say, that's good. But then,
Yeah.
if you don't, that's fine as well, because you take something else, you take something different out of it. and
Mm.
and like, I think, like what we mentioned earlier, it's all about the experience of how we consume certain the things we choose to consume, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best kind of writing as well, wherein you're not handing the answers, but like
Yeah.
the readers, they're finding the answers for themselves.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Agreed. Agreed. Steph said you got okay. Your perspective and what was that? Your perspective and creative choices seem so subversive to what's trendy or mainstream or what's expected. Comments,
uh,
reactions. I didn't feel like I was being told what to think, but it was empowering that you guys just stood by what's true to you. Yeah, it's also really hard to do because as someone who I think as someone who's a writer, most especially like somehow your identity is linked to being a writer. Like what you
yeah.
said earlier, it's not just something that you do when you're writing the actual writing. When you wake up, when you meet friends, when you're just walking around, it's just
Yeah.
always there
Yeah,
on. It's
especially
just
for
on.
poets, right? Like images. Like,
Yeah, it's always just going on in the background, and
yeah.
you can't really switch it off. Well, at least I can't switch it off.
Mm,
So there's that aspect of um like, do I edit myself so I don't get too hurt when people don't like my work?
yeah, yeah.
um yeah, that so there's that aspect as well. And I actually have this I came across this Instagram post earlier about um how as creatives, or as creatives, we're not I think we should stop trying to please everyone,
Yeah,
because
because we
sometimes,
can't.
yeah, because your work won't resonate with other people. And I think that sometimes the best works are really divisive. For example, like Taylor Swift, some people love her, some people don't like her, some people
Mm,
hate her, but the
mm,
people who do love her really really love her, and the
mm.
people that hate her really really hate her for the same reason that other people love her. So there's no point in trying to conform yourself to something that, just to try to please everyone, or just to
Yeah.
say like, oh, like buy my zines, and like like if it I mean, I think for me that's the tension. Like, you want your work to be read because you put a lot of hard work into it, but then also you also want to maintain that connection with people who will resonate with your work, and not just be like a blanket of like, it's I like it, but I'm not really super super loving it. I
Mm,
don't I don't want to be in that place where it's just, like mediocre, and like,
mm.
yeah, it was good, but then it's not anything life changing because the writer edited
You don't want to be in the
herself.
middle.
Yeah, I don't want to be in the middle where I'm trying to cater everyone's uh,
Mm,
everyone's personality, I guess, or
mm.
this.
Yeah, and it's difficult when you're a writer because for the like you put a lot of yourself in there. So
Yes. Yeah.
it's difficult not to take it personally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Because it's not like, okay, something's wrong with a product. Oh, it's just the factory like that. But when you're creative, when you're a writer, it's me.
Yeah, like
There's that
something's wrong with
pressure.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
And
actually not you. I think it's really more like an idea. Like ideas, they're given to us, and we're
first
just the ones like,
thing.
yeah, writing it out.
And how has that relationship changed for you guys over the years? Like, because like for me personally, it used to be like really personal, and then now
Mm,
as I got older, it was like, yeah, I mean, it's my work. It's not like, you have that distance, like what you said, like, oh, it's an
mm,
older sister looking at the younger
mm.
sister, and like,
Mm.
oh, don't be too harsh on yourself. If they don't like it, then just write another one.
Mhm. I think for me now, how it's changed is that before, when you're heartbroken, you write all heartbreak. Like when
Yeah.
you're sad, you write sad. But now, the more I grew older, I found that the writing in itself, the process of writing, it's inspiring. So
Mm,
like I don't have to be heartbroken to be able to, write about heartbreak, or like I don't have to be sad to write about sadness. So
mm,
definitely there are moments that I'm in that moment, so I write about it. But there are many, many moments as well wherein I'm not necessarily feeling what
yeah.
I'm writing. Mm-mm.
Yeah. It's also a hard balance though.
I,
Mm-mm.
Like that
yeah,
like, you don't want to sound mechanical, but also when
Yeah,
you write, you kind of know what to put in there to create the mood.
yeah. It's the
yeah,
process. Mm-mm. Yes, Jolene.
yeah. So oh, sorry, my husband just came back. Yeah. So the thing
Hello.
is, um, yeah. So the thing is that it is true. Is it's kind of like the acceptance that whether or not you're going to do it yourself, or you're going to, like, go through a publisher, or you're going to go through an agent, your work's going to get edited anyway.
Mm,
I would feel. So I think that's how I approach it. I would and kind of like approaching it in a way of um how can I best tell the story through my voice. And I think that's why like, understanding the entire process itself is very important, because that's when you can approach it from a more, I think, in a way that does not um compromise on our ideals a bit too much. Because I mean, we all have been there. We have like, no, don't change this, don't change that, I want it to be like this, that kind of way. But I think as I went along, it was a bit more eye opening to see what others have to say, and not view it as, because it's so personal, right? And not view it
mm,
in a way that they're attacking you, because
yeah.
after a while you kind of realize that you're not your
Yes,
work.
that's true.
Yeah.
And it's
So
it's
Yes,
so
subject
I
to
yeah.
preference. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
you're not your work. You're not your work.
Mm.
yeah. So I think after a while it's kind of like the you learn how to, I kind of learned how to like discern it a little bit more of, oh yeah, I think this person has a point. I may not
Yeah.
like that this person has a point, but this person has a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you try to weave it into, like, how do you, like, reconcile with that. And I think, I mean, I feel the base of it is still, are you having fun with the process?
Mm.
It was not until I was um it was not until when I was finding, like, just writing things that I thought was fun, rather than just like, things that people liked, where I was,
Mm,
oh, so this is how it feels when your characters run away from you and have thoughts.
Yeah.
And yeah, because when you come from a very planned perspective of okay, it has to be like this and like this and like this and like this, it can get very you kind of lose the joy in it.
Yeah.
after a while. And then once you start going diving into things or diving into stories that you just want to write because it's fun to you and it's enjoyable to you, and that was when I was like, oh, okay. So when people talk about, oh, my characters are doing all their things on their own now, oh, so
Yeah.
this is how it feels.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
They have their own mind.
yeah. Letting them surprise you.
Yes, because sometimes you, for example, you write characters and you want them to be really strong, and then somewhere in
Mhm.
there they start crying, and you're like, you're not supposed to cry, but you're supposed to be this strong, independent woman. But that's what the character wants to do. Like
Yeah.
somehow it just flows with the story that she would have that weakness to her. Yeah, that side to her. But
Mm.
then as a writer you can either try to force it and be changed, like no, no, you cannot cry. Like you have to be strong. Or you can just go with it and see where it goes.
Yeah,
Mm.
but people can tell
Just
though.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel readers can tell when you're like just
yeah, yeah, like
pushing it.
contrived, contrived. It's contrived. Like you make them fit the mold that you want them to be in,
Mhm.
just so you have that sense of con- control. Like it doesn't have a mind of its own.
Yeah.
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 That's why the editing is also
Mhm.
endless. Because there's always room for change and inspiration. It's like you plan this out, but then
Yeah.
it doesn't feel right. So you have to be still open for that change. That's also how you grow as a writer.
Yeah. And then the next question is, when do you stop?
Yes, that's very true.
Editing
Especially
it
when you don't
until
have an
the
external
last.
deadline. When do you stop?
Yes, deadlines are important.
Like okay, I'm. This could be edited some more, but stop there.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I wanted to ask, how do you view your work? Because we already said that your work is not really, you are not your work, but I know there are differing thoughts in like the creative world. Like sometimes people think, oh, you can live a horrible life, but then if you produce like a masterpiece, then it's okay. Or like I don't agree with that. So I want to know what your thoughts are on that. I mean, if you live a miserable life but you produce a novel, like I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, me too. I want to be
Yeah.
joyful. I want to be joyful.
Yeah, Jolene.
I do not subscribe to the. I do not subscribe to ring brings the best art. I think
the
we're
the
all at the
the
stage.
the tortured artist, the myth of the tortured
Yeah,
artist.
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't like that that
me too.
concept anymore.
The
Yeah,
tortured artist and the starving artist.
yes, and it's so
Tortured, miserable, starving.
and it's so
No.
glorified. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah, yeah,
can you
yeah,
not?
yeah.
Because the thing is, it's like, whether or not a masterpiece happens, it life still goes on,
Yes,
and I think at the baseline you still need to take care of yourself. If you cannot take care of yourself, you cannot produce work.
true.
Mm,
And it's kind of like the, like how people look at, how people look at the Renaissance and the Dark Ages, and they're like, oh, okay, Renaissance means everybody's like this, and Dark Ages means everybody's like that. But after a while, you realize that Dark Ages means nothing was happening nothing huge was happening in a certain area versus the rest of the world. The kind of thing. So life
mm,
still goes on, and I think it's a balance, and I feel it helps me a little bit more when I see it as a process rather than
Yeah,
a destination. Yeah, it's more of like
yeah.
if I'm doing this every day, it helps in a way.
Mm,
Yeah.
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 Oh, also for me, when it comes to writing, it just brings me so much joy. Like just the process, it's fun. It's something that I truly enjoy. And yes, there are struggles, but at the same time, it's just fulfilling. Like when you able to solve a problem, when you're able to finish something. So um, I think that sadness and heartbreak and loneliness and grief, it comes naturally. But I don't go out looking for it because I know
Mm.
at some point it will happen. And
Mm.
it's gonna make me grow. But at the same time, when it comes to the writing process, it's just for the most part just really joyful for me. And it's just really fun to do.
Actually, there was this I was reading this blog, and then she's a published author already. Um her name's Laurie Pemberton. No, not Laurie Pemberton, Laurie Wilbert. And then she was saying how she started out with a blog as well, and then newsletter, sending out newsletters, and so it's a very tight knit community. And then a few years back, she got a publishing deal, and then afterwards, she was reflecting on the process of getting that book deal, and then she was saying how actually doesn't change anything. Like when you get published or not get published, it's
Mm,
more the joy of it doesn't get better than the joy of putting words on paper.
yes. Mm,
And I think maybe Therese would agree because I know you've
mm,
been published
yeah.
like in in
This right now,
publishing industry.
just being able to write every day, that's already the dream. I'm already living the dream. So it would be amazing like to have awards and for people to buy my book, but just the act of writing and being able to write, it's already a dream come true. Yeah.
Jolene.
Yeah, I think yeah, Steph has some questions
Oh,
in the chat. Yeah,
uh,
so Diane first.
oh, Diane, some of your poems speak on friendship. What do you think makes friendships today hard to maintain, and how do you think people can be better friends to each other? Um, yeah, I think what makes friendships today hard to maintain is just the isolation we all find ourselves in, and because everything is so convenient. Um, I read somewhere that when you're as technology improves and convenience, people get more isolated. So, for example, now you don't have to go to the um palengke, wet market, to haggle for fish or veggies or whatever. You can just go on your computer and then have it delivered to you, and you don't even have to look at the delivery boy when it comes. Just leave it at my front door. Whereas before, you get to build that relationship with them over the years. Now it's just very impersonal. And for so that's one thing, just the technology and the progress and isolation, and the amount of effort it takes for you to meet up with someone or connect with someone. And then the other aspect I would say is just how people are afraid to be seen as less than or imperfect, because we live in this world where everything's like on social media, everything's like Instagrammable or Pinterest worthy. Nobody is willing to open up their life and show others that, oh, actually, I haven't washed my pillowcase for months. Like, nobody says that on social media. And that's hard. That's a problem because it's how people build friendships. They don't really build friendships on social media when everything's rosy and happy, and people are getting married, having babies, or having vacations. People become friends when you share the deep things, like when someone dies and she's there for you when you lose a job, when you're having a breakdown in the middle of trying to finish a deadline. Like, those things are what builds the relationships. And yeah, so those are two things. One is the convenience, and the other is the willingness to be vulnerable with one another and to be honest about your experiences. And then, how do you think people can be better friends to each other? Listen well. I think it's really important for people to listen well. When people tell you something, you listen to them. You remember what's important to them. You remember important dates. You listen for what they don't say as well. Like, not just what they say. You listen for what they don't share. maybe they don't share about their family, so it's like ask you, you kind of, hey, you haven't shared about your mom, can you maybe tell me more about that? And then you kind of find out like, oh, she doesn't have a good relationship with her mom. So those are things that you have to be intentional about. It won't just come to you like, if you don't slow down and listen to someone. So that's my thing, that's my one thing, like listen better to your friends. So
Okay, I think mine's the next question. So, how important is it for you to contextualize your puzzles to an Asian setting and link them to characters who are clever and or cunning and to keep secrets from the reader? Okay. Uh, I think that I feel that the contextualizing comes naturally because of where I am and my background. There's something I did tell one of my peers was that your by nature of you writing a story, that story has automatically become Singaporean slash Filipino slash Asian slash Malaysian slash Chinese, whatever it is, because your nuances and your habits actually seep into the writing when you do it from a place of authenticity, and not done in a rather not done in a like checkbox kind of
mm,
way. So because I think everything we do influences how we express ourselves and how we
yeah,
um talk about things that we care about. So I think
yeah,
actually one of the writers who uh made this very clear to me was another one of the writers who has been speaking at Sealit Circle, Joyce Chung. Her one of her first books uh, was an example for me to see you can write something that is local but appeal across the board because it's so relatable, not just because of its origins and culture and whatnot. Like it's appealing, but it's also very unique in the fact that the writer is doing the writing authentically. So I think I do apply the same thing to my puzzles. My Chinese is not very good, so I don't really dare to do anything in Chinese just because that are commonly known are like universal, so it's still not so bad. Yeah, but to link them to characters, I think it's also the um I think it's also kind of like the letting your characters run amok sometimes. Um,
yeah,
and I think I feel that happens when you start to look at characters and go like, you know what, I would never do something like this if I was this person. And
mm,
and how to keep secrets from the reader, I feel it's also a case of how it aligns with the story itself. If it makes sense, it happens. But at the same time, I think I also draw a lot of inspiration from um, games that have multi-layered lore, where it's everybody kind of has a different experience based on what you're curious about and what you decide to click wildly about. And I think or kind of like do you notice that the page numbers are not the actual page numbers? Why? So not just about it's not just about telling people, oh, this is a puzzle book, solve it. It's more of like the some things are not right here.
mm,
If you don't notice, you still have a story to experience, and I think also kind of that's kind of one of the ways that I approach that. Yeah.
yeah. I love that. I love that
Yeah.
too.
Like heightening your
You.
senses, being sensitive to observe.
It's like when you when you're writing something and then you put in, unless you put in things that only you know, and then you kind of wish
Yeah.
the reader would get it, but then if you
Yeah.
don't, then it's okay because it's something that you want
Yeah.
to put
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
But also
You
amazing
know,
when they do notice it.
You know something funny? There was this one cipher I did for a novel like manuscript. The beta reader was like furiously commenting grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, and then she realized like halfway through, oh, this is a puzzle.
Yeah.
The typos are deleted
God.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
she
love
got played. Oh, thank you for solving my puzzle. Thank you for falling into my trap.
yeah. I love it
Yeah, that's funny.
when you're so intentional as well. Like you have that grasp with your craft and that you can be intentional at the same time with your writing.
Yeah, like it's very nuanced.
Hmm.
Like it's there because you put it there, not just
Yeah.
randomly or by accident. That it's there. I
Yeah.
feel like every every detail has a purpose. Like even the page
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think I find it hard because I'm not a very detailed person. Like I'm more of a big picture kind of person. That's why like when when you were saying like, oh, the page numbers aren't the page numbers, I'm like, I didn't notice. I didn't notice that.
Mm.
This usually comes in the editing phase where you're like, okay, where can I put this in and it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Did the editors try to
That's
edit that part or no?
No, I haven't been in a situation where editors try to edit my puzzles yet.
Like this is the wrong grammar. Like it's part of it.
Circle, is this intentional?
please explain. Please write one paragraph. Explain yourself.
Yeah. Ah, okay.
I've
Oh,
had
Therese.
moments I've had moments like that in my book too. Like if my main character was very emotional, I made sure she had typos in her entries. Because like I'm imagining how she's typing it. So like yeah,
Mm,
lots of missing letters here. Because yeah, she's typing very fast and crying while she's typing it. So yeah, stuff like
Mhm.
that.
yeah, it reminds me of something I put in one of my poems. I think it's fragments where it there's a part there where it's like thank you for
Yeah.
and then my friend was like, is that a stutter or is that a typo? And then I said, yes.
I love
Yeah,
that
and then
visual element of poetry as well.
yeah, and then she said,
Mhm.
I think it's
Mm.
a so this person is like she doesn't like poetry, so she for her to read it was already a big thing for me. And then she was saying, is it a typo, is it a stutter? And then I told her, see, you're not bad at poetry, you got that it was a stutter. And then she was like, no, the
Mm.
point is I had to ask you if it was a stutter or not.
But at least she
Yeah,
had that already. Like she's developing her
yeah,
Mhm.
taste.
yeah, yeah, it's just fun to do. Like, is it a typo? It's not a typo.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll read my question. Your book seems to be a love letter to oneself and creativity. How did you know the book was going to take this trajectory since it starts from love or heartbreak?
Mm.
Um, I think for me, I'm just so grateful that I got to edit it, that I'm older. So that I also got to put or open myself up more and grow in the process because I was able to put me now who knows the value of creativity. I was able to put that in my character and able to understand I'm as a songwriter. So because she is a songwriter, she's able to be most eloquent and express herself through writing songs. So I think when I finally understood that, yeah, she's a songwriter. So she's most eloquent in writing songs. So this novel, it's the grace of creativity. It's through creativity that one can heal or one can have safe spaces and get to know themselves better and just get them through the day. I figured that out just as I was continuously writing and rewriting and editing the novel. So I think it started just as an idea. Okay, we wrote a song, so she's gonna be a songwriter. But then when you're in the heart of writing, you fall deeper into the heart and you find so much about your character, and she's bigger than what you ever expected her to be. And
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that that's what happened with Girl with a Broken String. So it's just wonderful for me that she really got into writing songs because she was heartbroken. But
Mm,
then at the end of it, she also discovered or was transformed by love because of songwriting. So using songwriting as a tool of coping with heartbreak, but then discovering a new love, a new kind of love, powerful kind of love because of creativity. So yeah, that's what happened with Girl with a Broken String.
mm-mm.
Yeah, I really like that it actually just started with this one concept and it just blossomed. I think that's also kind of how that's how I kind of felt it happened
Yeah.
when I was reading through. Is like, did it start with the song or did it start the story or did it like just evolve together? And I
Mm,
thought, yeah, it shows the uh authenticity behind it. I would say it's kind of like this is something for you to enjoy as it is. So
thank you, Jolene. Yeah.
I like what Therese, what you said about safe spaces because I feel like it's present in both of your works. Where, for example, for you, when someone is reading that might have gone through heartbreak, like that experience of reading the journals and then listening to the songs and then looking at the yeah, and she is more eloquent in the songs compared to her journals.
Mm-mm.
And then also for Jolene, like the puzzle, putting yourself in the shoes of that agent or like that girl, um, then figuring out the puzzle, it just gives you space, like a safe space away from your everyday
Yeah.
life to escape into
mhm,
something that's that's not you're not just in your thoughts all the time or in your head all the time.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I don't know. For me, that's one of the most important things about a piece of good work. Like it needs to give you that space to be safe, like
Yeah.
to just like everything else around you is pressuring and have so many responsibilities. But then when you're reading like a work that you enjoy, it's like you're just in that moment and you're free to just happy, sad, angry, curious, playful. Like that's
Mm.
mhm,
something that I think is valuable about creating.
Mm.
Because I think sometimes as creatives have this fear of maybe what I create isn't that important or like yeah like you can't really eat it but um but it's funny how when people are really in even for people who don't normally read poetry or yeah when they don't read poetry but then when you talk to them about a certain part in their life where they've gone through something really hard, they would always say like, oh, I listened to this song or I saw this poem and or I saw this or it's this TV series that got me through this horrible like
Yeah.
mhm.
heartbreak or loneliness in high school. Like that's some I don't think you can price something like that. Like you
Yeah.
can't
Very
really
true.
yeah.
Mhm.
Something you can hold on to when it gets too dark or when you feel lost or you don't understand what's happening. For me, also, there was this tendency wherein if it's a first heartbreak, you just brush it off. It's part of life. Oh, your first heartbreak. But when you're actually in that moment, it really does feel like the world's ending. So
Yeah.
I wanted to write about that experience to give comfort, yeah, to be a safe space, because first heartbreaks can be devastating.
Yeah. definitely. And um, there's also something I think about writing about those things, like for example, heartbreak, or just maybe something as random as losing your favorite shirt or favorite
Yeah.
shoe.
Mm.
Like it kind of gives dignity to your experience, or it validates the experience.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm sad because it was valuable to me, so therefore I
Mm.
am sad. Like, not just something to be pushed over
Mm-mm.
by putting it into poem or a story or some shape, or gives you that um gives that experience the value, the weight it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then by doing that, it somehow helps you to get over, I put air quotes, get over it, or
You lean into it, and
lean
then
Yes.
into
it's
it, or
Yeah.
something
grow
that you process. Yeah.
Yeah. You feel it.
with
Allow
it.
yourself to feel it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Then it just, once you process it, it just gets folded. It's like what do you call it, like a croissant, like the butter just gets folded in into your why am I using that image? But there, it's a croissant,
Your
and then you
feelings are
fold
butter.
my poetry. Yeah, you fold in the butter, and it's just part of the final
Yeah.
product. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I read this somewhere. I did not make this up. It was like grief and butter and croissants. Croissant.
Your croissant and your feelings are butter.
Yeah,
That will be
it
on a
gives
t-shirt. Your feelings are butter.
your feelings are.
That's
It's a
actually a very nice
merch
image. Yeah.
merchandise. Croissant. Rose like croissant.
No one can decide how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't want to seem pretentious, when you croissant
Sometimes
or
you just say croissant.
croissant. Croissant.
Croissant. Sometimes you just say it really badly so you don't sound pretentious. It's a croissant. It's a croissant. But yeah, if you guys are good, people sometimes end it by asking what's next or following each other on IG. Um,
What are you thinking about, Diane?
Well, it was said. So.
I was waiting for you to say something.
croissants.
Actually, we don't want it to end, Steph. We don't want it to end.
No, we don't want it to end yet.
we're
Um,
hijacking. We're hijacking
Yeah,
this.
it's fun.
I, so before you decided to okay, how big of a role does support mean to you in
What?
creating? Maybe
How big?
maybe let's go there. Like support, how big of a factor does it play? Like friends, family, significant other, or a community, like have
Hmm.
how does it impact your work, and do you find that it's,
Mhm.
or is it not helpful?
Let's to go first.
Jolene, it looks like she has something already.
Uh, I think it really I would also say what stage are you talking about. I think when you're in the process itself, the writing itself, I think it's for some strange reason. I Okay, because I started doing long form very very more regularly when I did NaNoWriMo. So
Yeah,
Singapore has quite a huge I would say big NaNoWriMo community, and then the municipal liaisons, the ones who facilitate the activities here, they organize write-ins. So the thing is, I think I got spoiled by them in a sense, where it's kind of like the I'm good writing by myself, but when you write when other people are writing around you, it also feels like that the creative energy is there. So I think that kind of support is also
Mm.
pretty good, and I think it is helping like some authors get things done because when you're at home and doing it by yourself, YouTube is around, your phone is around, everything
Mm,
else is around. So that's one thing. But I think it's also great to have a good like support system, like our group of friends who are willing to not just read your work, but also like friends who you can be excited about all this and will not just brush you aside. And I think that's really important as well.
mm,
Um, a lot of us are very affected by our environment. So when it comes to a point of when it comes to a point of like this is not working out, that is not working out, you at least have some you know you have a support system to turn to. May not be in the industry, it may not be in the industry, maybe out maybe in the industry depending on what you need. But yeah, I feel that as much as writing is touted as solitary and publishing moves at a glacial pace, thank you to the shit we do not talk about when we are writing that podcast. I cannot get the name right. But yeah. So so when you're talking about things where it needs a like input in does not include output, like you know your effort in does not equal output. Support is very important when you're facing like low days, um impatience, why are things not moving,
yeah.
why am I trying to get this out but then it's not coming out. So
Yeah.
yeah, or like you know that meme where like in your head is all like the Michelangelo and it turns out it's like one two circles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, when you said that, I remembered this advertising meme where it's like, Life of Pi, the
Mm,
movie with the tiger and the boy. And so
Mm.
in their brief, it's like the tiger and the boy, and then it looks all like magical. And then underneath it says advertising budget, and it's like this. It's just filmed in like a backyard somewhere with like someone wearing uh, a coat and a lost, a stray, like a cat. It's not even a tiger. So it's like Life of Pi, then advertising budget. It looks, that's the output you get.
what client wants? What's the client budget? What we
I
budgeted
want.
for? What we budgeted?
Very true.
Yeah, tangent, but yeah, it's funny. No, I wanted to ask about um not ask, but I wanted to also say something about the writing being a solitary thing. Like it is a solitary thing, but
Yeah.
I think you have. I don't really I think over the years, this concept of writing or being alone and having to write changed for me. Because you do need people to read your work, and you need people to comment, give feedback, what's good, what's not working, what resonates with them. And you also need to read other people. You can't write well if you don't read other people.
Yeah.
And so it just destroys this idea of being a self-sufficient, tortured writer banging out something on his computer or typewriter.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I feel like it's a myth that when you write, I mean, it is a solitary thing. You do need to be alone to
Mm-mm.
write down things, but overall, when even when you're reading books, people always reference their favorite authors, so like C.S.
Mm.
Lewis, and then he
Mm.
has influenced a lot of Christian writers today. So your work isn't ever in a vacuum,
Yeah.
and you can't
Mm.
really create in a vacuum. I
Yeah.
feel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. Like no one's gonna hold your hand when you're writing. There are times, there are days that you really do feel all alone. But at the same time, if you just really think about it and look around, there are people who are there when you need somebody, like someone to talk
Mm.
to. Yeah, because sometimes, it happens. The doubts, the noise in your head becomes too loud. But then when you talk to someone that you trust or you love, that noise just, it lessens. It's not as
Mm.
loud and it gives you the courage to just continue and move forward. Yeah.
Agreed. Jolene, you wanna add something or add?
Did we okay? I was like, did we
Oh,
break off?
you
I
already.
couldn't. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I think that's how that's also the irony, right? It's like a lot of people think that it's all it's all like one genius work or whatever it is, but then
Yeah.
at the same time, you yourself, we ourselves like realize that without beta readers, without editors, without people who actually the
Yeah.
ones who are the long suffering friends who get
Yeah.
our who,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who look at our work and go like, how do I say this?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's something missing, but I cannot really tell you what because I don't know
Mm,
either.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people you're doing something and it takes 10 years and they're still reading it. Like they're still reading
Mm.
your work.
Yeah.
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 Sometimes they don't even necessarily have to be writers themselves. They just
Mhm.
like they're just a friend. Like, I don't like this. I like this. I really like this part. Or this
Mm.
is
But it's always
boring.
interesting to get people outside of uh industry to like uh take a look as well. It's really very interesting to see what they pick up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes when we're in a room of writers, you tend to pick so many things or like be so
Mhm.
technical about it. But then when you show it to other people, it's actually not how they
Yeah.
see it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
right? It's like, oh,
Yeah,
for you,
or that
it's
meme what spends 2 days researching about what kind of silverware is historically accurate in this period of time. And the reader is just like, oh, that person fainted? Okay. It's like that two lines are gone.
Writers have the weirdest search history
Yeah.
on
yeah. So
Google.
sometimes you search like, what is the what did I search before? Like, what is the weapon they used for, or does this weapon exist in the middle
Middle
ages?
ages.
And you're
Yeah.
yeah, and you're thinking like, how would I even? Nobody would actually know if it's accurate, but you're just like searching it on YouTube or on Google, and like, actually, it doesn't fit here because, and then you go through this rabbit hole of like, oh, what are the
Yeah.
different kind of swords,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
don't end up writing anything.
Yeah, that's what writing is also. Lots of
Yeah.
research. Mm-mm.
It's like
Yeah, and
how can this person die over a period of time but nothing shows up in
Yeah.
or like you know those when you name things and then people think you put a lot of thought into it, but actually you just
Mm.
looked over there and it's like, oh, it's a, let's name it red um red bubble or something, and then they
Mm.
think that it's so profound, but actually no,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
thought of it
like guys the curtains are blue because they
yesterday.
are blue.
Yeah.
I think
why
especially
is
for Jolene's book. Especially for Jolene's book.
why is it blue? Oh, it's
Is
just
it a
blue.
clue?
Yeah.
What does it mean? Doesn't mean anything.
I need to like throw a herring that is literally red one day just to like mess with everybody.
Why is it blue? It's yeah, or like sometimes people ask you to explain something and you're just actually no, it doesn't really mean anything. It just means what it says literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's fun when sometimes when people come up to you and they're like, "No, actually, I think this is." That's when it gets annoying. Like, "No, actually, I think this is what you meant." I'm like, "I'm the writer. I think I know what I meant when I wrote it."
I think Billy Collins has a poem for that. I think it was entitled Introduction to Poetry, wherein he said like don't tie poetry up like in like what do you call that? Like don't tie him up in a stool and like beat out answers.
Yeah, yeah.
Like just letting poetry be what it is.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. Um. What else
Okay
did we
then.
not cover? What's your favorite? Who are your like inspirations today? Ever since you started writing and you read and who do you do to be inspired to write?
Mm,
Maybe we can end with that.
mm.
Mhm.
Okay, I can go first. I think when it comes to creativity, it really, I really, like for me, living a life that's creative, it really also taught me to live a life in awe. Like just opening your heart for moments and like noticing like the beauty of life and the world and the people around you. I think that's inspiring. Like just the fact that you're able to breathe in and out and enjoy a warm cup of coffee or like look at your plants growing outside the window. I think that's inspiring in itself. So a creative life for me, it's really a life in awe. I'm inspired because I've surrounded myself with people who inspire me as well, like fellow creatives, the people I work with, and of course, yeah, there are a lot of storytellers. Who really changed the way I look at things and who also strengthened my voice as a storyteller. Like some of them are spoken word poets, Sarah Kay, Phil Kay, Andrew
Sarah
Gibson.
Kay.
Yeah.
Sarah Kay.
So, yeah. Elizabeth Gilbert. I love her way of looking at the world. Hanif Abdurakib is also an amazing poet. So, yeah, there's so many. I can't name them all, but yeah, I think it's important that we keep a list of them, just so that when we're feeling burned out or feeling lost, we can just look to these people and yeah, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's some of them.
Jolene. What about
Um, I think I draw a lot of inspiration from cross media as well. I think locally, the one in Singapore, the one that actually got me to just take that leap to go into including puzzles into my book was this book by Ernie Saleh called The Java Enigma. So it's based on Borobudur and the puzzles behind it, like kind of like looking for hidden treasure and one of like the trigger novels for me. The other one that the other new author that I've been like trying to chase is Janice Hallett. She did this book called The Appeal. Uh no prose at all. A book this thick, no prose at all. It's all
Pictures?
messages.
Oh.
All messages. So the thing is, it was like what hit me about it is all you are just reading through correspondences, and
Oh.
from there you can actually infer, oh, this person is not very well liked in the community because you see things like, oh, sorry, I can't do this for you at 10:20. Oh, sorry, I can't do this for you at 11 o'clock. And then this person at 12 goes like, hi, you're the first one I thought of to help me with this. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did like that kind of, it just piques your curiosity and just makes you infer, and then when it gets to the payoff, it's really very rewarding. And another one is this game. a lot of indie game developers
Mm.
lately have been doing all this uh very cozy slash cozy, but also, like, it piques your interest in things. One of them is this creator Daniel Mullins. He did this game called Inscription, where if you're not careful, you would think it's a trading card game on Steam and all that. You would think it's a trading card game, and people can just keep playing the trading card game and not know that that's just 25% of the game. It's like the
Mm.
rest of it is based on you uh filling your curiosities by either tampering around the environment, or poking your nose in places that you shouldn't be. Yeah.
Oh.
This is where I get a lot of the inspiration for multi-level, like the multi-level lore, multi-layered lore, and things are hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspiration is really everywhere. It's not just with like literary work, it's everywhere. Any form of storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also something about stories, like people. Oh, what about me? Yeah, so there are a lot of things that inspire me, but I think I draw a lot of inspiration from Bible. Just reading through the poetry in like Isaiah, or was it in Job or Lamentations, even the Psalms, when you could feel the anguish in in those poetry. Like the psalmist would really say, like, why did you leave me here? And you know, like everyone hates me, or my tongue clings to the roof of my mouth. I can't speak. All my bones are broken and dried up, and or 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 I wish I was never born. And those aren't things that usually people think of when they think of the Bible. It's like they think it's very um full of rules, or you have to keep. But when when you get into the gritty of Psalms, and you kind of feel like, oh, this was written thousands of years ago, but why is it so relatable? There's that human aspect to it that never changes, even if you know advancing, or our culture is different from theirs. Yeah, and also the other thing that inspires me would be just, I think, Josh Garrels. I mentioned him in my member interview. He's also someone who made an album. He didn't stick to one genre. So there was like folk, instrumental,
Mm.
singer songwriter, and then rap as well, hip hop. And then you think, oh, like, oh, you can't do that. That's not really done in the music industry or what. But he decided to do that because that was his background. So he does movie scores. He does used to be a skateboarder, so it's very ingrained in him, like that hip hop and R&B kind of culture and music. And so when he started creating this album called Love and War and the Sea in Between, which is actually on my list of the, like what you said, the list of artists that have
Mm-mm.
inspired me. It's on my zine. But just being able to create something that's not already existing. Like, it's scary because nobody has done it yet. But I think the album came out 2011, and then 12 years later, I think it's still one of the best albums around, because and it sort of became a benchmark for other independent artists, like, oh, I want to be like that. But then of course they don't really, because they're not that person, so they don't get to replicate their what they've done or their success. But it's really inspiring to forge your own path. I think as a creative, that's something you have to grapple with. Like you want to feel included, and you want to feel like your work resonates with people, but at the same time also know that you have a certain way of looking at things or
Mm.
doing things that might not be popular, or it might not resonate with a lot of people, but it's how you were made, or how your, like what Jolene said, your life experiences seep through what you
Yeah.
write. And it's really important to take care of yourself as well, because you can't create without being healthy, like emotionally or yeah,
Yeah.
emotionally or
Mhm.
physically. And that so aside from Josh Garrels, other people who have inspired me, I have this art teacher here. I don't know if you know her, Julie. Therese. Her name is Fernando Sena.
Mm.
He's a
No.
national artist, and then he does pastels and acrylic paintings. But
Oh.
he actually started out as a shoe shine boy in Tondo. He was
Mm.
younger and he had no money at all. And he worked as a shoe shine boy, and he would deliver newspapers to like Manila Hotel, and he would see these like paintings put up in the hotel lobbies. And then I think he got a scholarship from one of a charity or a nonprofit. And then ever since then, he's been also giving back by giving free workshops to
Mm.
like inmates, prison and cancer patients, and like street children. And I think that's what those people inspire me, like people who are generous, because you can't be creative if you're selfish. Just
Yeah.
doesn't work.
That's true.
um
Mm-mm.
at the same time, if you're someone who chooses to be creative, I think as someone who, like, I am a Christian, so I believe that everything comes from God and from Jesus. So when you, like, as humans we're limited, but if you're drawing inspiration from something that's outside of you, and I think that your inspiration won't ever end.
Mm.
And it's also that form of like generosity of, you're limited, but you are able to be generous and give, and somehow it still works because we don't live, like, if you follow the theological, like, like God is infinite, meaning he never runs out of things or ideas or creative things to say or do or download into your brain, versus someone who's like just human, and we get tired and we only have so much ideas in one day, in one like one week, a month. But I think if you believe in God, and he kind of gives you that inspiration to also not be afraid to keep giving, because sometimes you think, oh, I don't want to give everything, because like what if what's going to be left in my creative like reservoir. But actually I've found that even for people who don't believe, like artists, I read artists interviews, and they're always talking about how as a creative person you're supposed to give things away and to share things, share your knowledge, expertise, connections, give yourself, sacrifice yourself, and offer it to people. And the more you give, you feel like you might get you might get shortchanged, but actually it don't. The more you give, the more it returns
Comes
to
back to
you,
you.
and the
Yeah.
more, and the more you're enriched by, sometimes it surprises you how much you're able to give. Like you think, I've reached my limit, or my point, and you find that, oh wait, actually no, I have more to give. And then others
Yeah.
start chipping in, and other people start offering. Yeah, and then it sounds very counterintuitive, but by if you're kind of miserable with your time and your attention or your resources, you can't really create. At least I think that's true for me. You're just so constrained and not free to give away things or ideas or your heart, like when you put your heart into something and then you give it away, like that's, I don't know, that for me. So generous people doesn't have to be like writers or creatives. It can be even, like waiter who serves you at the
Mm. Yeah, as a human being.
restaurant. Yeah,
Yeah.
like as a human
Mm.
being, like they're tired but they smile at you. Things like those inspire me.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
so it's
beautiful.
10:30.
Yes.
This was very fun. Let's follow each
that
Yes.
other.
was that was very fun. Yeah, I did follow you guys on.
Yeah. I've yet to follow Jolene.
And then we can just send our 'cause we have a channel here, then we can send all of the like the inspiration,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
books and the novels and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay!
Let's keep writing.
Thank you guys for those who are watching. Thank you
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
attending our
Thank
Yeah,
very
there's
you.
people on the YouTube. Shout
yeah,
out.
hello to people on YouTube. Thank you for coming. shout
Shout
out, shout out to YouTube
out
people.
to the YouTube.
Yes.
Well, I have a closing like spiel here. So thanks
Or do they
everyone
have
for joining.
questions? Do they have questions for us? Maybe not.
Mm,
Ah,
yeah,
they
they
were
were just
saying
saying
hi.
We're
Okay.
all saying hi. Okay. Hi,
Hi.
guys.
Ah,
Hello.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining our Zinester Talk here in our community platform and on YouTube. So you can check out the excerpt of Girl with a Broken String, Venture, and the Cypher Zine series at slczinemarket.myshopify.com. It's slczinemarket.myshopify.com. The links are in the YouTube chat also. And if you've bought a festival ticket, we hope to see you this Saturday for more craft talks, panel discussions, and the mini expo. So this Saturday is the last day of the mini expo, so we hope you can come and hang out with the various publishers at their exhibit booths. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Good
thank
night.
you.
Oh,
Bye.
group
Thank
pick.
you,
Sorry.
Jolene. Thank you,
A group
Three.
pic. Thank
Group
you.
Thank you.
picture.
All right. Ready? Okay. Smile. You're taking. Oh, I'm taking. Okay. I'm sorry.
We miss you, Steph.
Okay. Ready? One, two, three. Shit. Wait. There.
I'll do it. I'm fine. I'll do it.
I got it. I got it. I got it.
I'm doing the blade check.
I think everyone's good.
Wait, let me check. Okay, everyone's good.
All right.
Okay.
Hey.
Thank
Thank
you.
We'll see.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks. It
guys.
was super awesome.
Bye.
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 Bye.